if you know the concept, it's easier to understand why we're doing what we're doing, right? If you don't understand the concept, it's just harder. Okay, anyway, this is your left side of the heart. This is your right side of the heart, okay? You had an echocardiogram done when you're in the hospital, okay? Your left side of the heart is not the main issue. A lot of times, patient with heart failure is the left side of the heart. Your left side of the heart is actually, in fact, doing okay. Your left side of the heart, in fact, is pumping well. It's pumping the blood to the aorta, about 50 to 55% ejection fraction. So that's normal. That's a normal ejection fraction, okay?
That's why it's okay.
The problem that's coming is your right side of the heart, okay? Now, just to kind of boil it down to the normal physiology of the heart, the blood usually flows one way, okay? It doesn't go backward unless there's some issue going on. So blood usually comes in from the body into the right atrium. From the right atrium goes to the right ventricle. And then your right ventricle eventually pumps this blood out into what we call the pulmonary artery, okay? All right, we'll get to that part, but pulmonary arteries eventually goes to the lungs. When you take a deep breath, the blood gets oxygenated. Now your blood has oxygen in it. Comes back from the lungs into the left atrium to the left ventricle. And your left ventricle eventually, sort of the powerhouse that pumps the blood out into the aorta. The aorta supplies the blood to the brain, but also supplies to the body with oxygenated blood, right? When the body uses up all the oxygen, it recirculates back into the right atrium to the right ventricle. The same cycle goes again. It goes to the lungs, come back to left atrium, left ventricle, and then pumps the blood out. Okay? Understand that concept, right?
Got it.
So when we saw you in the hospital, what we saw was that when they did the echocardiogram, your right ventricle and your right atrium were pretty dilated out. They were very stretched out. Okay? And so what we saw was that your pressure in the pulmonary arteries were really, really high, severely high, okay? I don't think this pressure was an overnight thing. I think it was a slow buildup of your pulmonary artery pressure building up to a point where your right ventricle and right atrium started dilating out. So think about it. Your right ventricle normally pumps the blood into the pulmonary arteries. If you have a pretty big hose, right, and you're pushing whatever fluid or water through it, it's just easy to push the blood through. Look, now imagine this pulmonary artery goes from this size to a size like this. Okay? A size like this now, your right ventricle has to work so much harder just to push blood forward into the pulmonary arteries, okay? Now, over a period of time, like I said, if this is not taken care of, your right ventricle eventually has a lot of back pressure pushing backward because remember, you're pumping against a diameter like this versus a diameter like this. So your right ventricle eventually gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it does that, this back pressure pushes back into the right atrium, and the right atrium gets bigger and bigger. When this right ventricle gets bigger, it gets, dilated out. Your valve here starts, instead of like this, it's like this now. And so it's leaking backward to the right atrium. Okay, so you have a leaky valve here. You also have a leaky valve here because of the back pressure pushing backward.
Got it.
Overall, okay? Now, just to kind of really quickly finish this presentation here. We know your pressure is high. We know your right atrium and right ventricle are dilated out based on the echocardiogram. So it looks at, from a picture-wise, anatomical-wise, we know it's big. But we don't really know what the pressures are looking like here, 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 and here. And so think about it. We know the pressure here is high. It's kind of like, we know, let's say if you have hypertension, just your general hypertension, what do? We do a cuff to check your pressures, right? The only way to know what the pressure here is by doing a procedure where we go in and measure that pressure here, here, and here. Primarily, we want to know how high these pressures are.
Okay.
If we know how high these pressure are, we can eventually prescribe you medication. Your insurance is not gonna give us these medications, and they're very pricey medications, just FYI, and that's why insurance are gonna fight back, unless we do a procedure called the White cath to measure these hemodynamics. And if it looks like it is truly pulmonary arterial hypertension, then we would put you on these meds for it.
So we have to prove it to them.
Yeah, we have to prove it to the insurance company. If we don't prove it, then it's a losing battle essentially. So.
Yeah, then I'll be normal again.
Yeah, so it